Hellhole Canyon, and yes, Canyon, not Kenyon, Oregon, in 1887, a tragic event would leave a scar on what would come to be named Hell's Canyon, Oregon. The event has several names, but is nonetheless known as one of the grimmest events in the canyon's history. The tragedy would be known as the Chinese Massacre or Deep Creek Massacre. The gorge belonged to an Indian tribe named the Shoshone. The Snake River winds its way through the gorge, and many would-be settlers warned of the dangers the area possessed. Still, people came to the area soon and would start to tame this Wild West plot of land and water. These are by far some of the scariest national parks in our country that you should probably avoid at all costs. But what makes them so terrifying? Well, that, my friends, has to do with their name. Within the state and national parks systems in the United States, there are places that the very names are a warning in and of themselves. These sometimes desolate and hard-to-reach areas can present challenges and danger that for some people is too much of an arduous task to visit. The names of these places suggest an ominous aura that caused them to have hell within the name. For instance, Hellhole Canyon, California. While there is much debate about why hell exists in the name, many speculate that it has to do with the curses or other strange dark energies that exist there. In 1866, Hellhole Canyon, California, situated in Borrego Desert State Park, it was little more than a mining claim for prospectors looking to strike gold in the California landscape. Described as one hell of a hole to get out of by ranchers, the area was hard to access and water was scarce. Upon entering the hiking trail, there is a memorial with the names of those that succumbed to the elements and did not bring enough water to make the journey on the 5.5-mile hiking trail. The trail is well maintained and has placards that have information all about the flora and fauna one can expect to see. There are all several trails in the area to choose from. Some are easy, some moderate, and a few are advanced. The area is also equestrian friendly. Depending on the time of year and the trail chosen to hike, there may be a small stream to pass over on Hell Creek Trail. The preserve is closed in the summer months due to extreme heat conditions and is open from Friday all the way to Monday, 8 a.m. until sunset each day. Extreme caution should be taken when negotiating this area as temperatures can rise quickly and the landscape can be very unforgiving. This is a moderate to advanced trail with no services and no water stations. Choose your destination wisely and the trail that best suits your hiking abilities. Take plenty of water and wear weather-appropriate protective clothing. The area is closed to the public starting in August due to extreme heat conditions. Interested in visiting Hellhole Canyon Preserve? Well, you can find out more information online, or check with the nearest ranger station in the area. Sign in the trailhead and leave the itinerary with friends or family with expected time to return. Now, Dawn White. One of the most recent tragedies due to heat to take place happened in 2021, when 68-year-old Dawn White was gearing up for the bighorn sheep count that the park puts on every year due to the worldwide health concerns of COVID that had kept people inside their homes. This described nature lover was from the Culver City area and was excited to be helping with the tally that is part of a citizen science project, all that had been conducted every summer for over 50 years. The project itself draws in people from all over California and beyond that brave the often triple-digit weather in little more than shaded tarps while collecting vital data for scientists that can keep track of the herd and health of the magnificent animals. This is crucial for the park's service because the bighorn sheep was added to the endangered species list in the 1990s. 90 people showed for the planned event, and many more were placed on a waiting list should someone become ill and unable to attend. The response to the volunteer position was overwhelming, with the turnout of interested parties bringing in a larger group than in years past. As volunteers made their way into the Anza Borrego Desert State Park, temperatures began to climb, reaching 116 degrees Fahrenheit. The Park Service provided shelter tents for volunteers, However, White was found unresponsive by another of the volunteers in one such tent. Attempts were made to resuscitate the 68-year-old, but White untimely passed. It was unclear in given reports as to what the coroner ruled as the ultimate cause of passing. Most speculate that it was due to heat exhaustion, even though White had access to water and had taken measures earlier that month to ensure that he had extra. White had hiked into the area and deposited several bottles of water in anticipation of the heat that July weather in California is notorious for. There's also a creek that runs through the area where White would have been stationed, but because of drought conditions, the water source was dried up. On July 19th, tragedy struck as White and a companion were found just after noon by another volunteer. White was pronounced at the scene, with the companion being admitted, treated, and released at an area hospital. A firefighter that aided in every recovery was also hospitalized from heat exhaustion. The state made a decision to cancel the herd count out of concern for the safety of other volunteers and revisited their safety protocols for the event. The count is done in the summer months as the big sheephorn will come in search of water. Dawn White has been the only victim to succumb to heat during the 50 years of the event. Another victim was taken on April 20th, 2014. A 57-year-old San Diego resident was found by a hiker in the Hellhole Canyon area. Medical examiners didn't release the cause of Samuel Holloman's death. However, Sheriff Sergeant Frank Colorado did say that homicide was not suspected. Another victim of Hellhole Canyon. Has the devil found a home in Hellhole Canyon? Well, in 2014, urban explorers heard of a place in Hellhole Canyon called the Devil's Den. The group has read about the place on the Hidden San Diego website. This is a site dedicated to examining little-known places around San Diego. Curious about the place and why such a name was given to it, the team geared up and headed out in search of Devil's Den. Not long after reaching the main road leading to the site, the group saw locals out walking and stopped to ask if they had ever heard of such a place. "You don't want to go down the road there," one lady warned. "The guy down there carries and you'll find yourself in trouble. Best sticks to the main road." When they asked about abandoned homes, the lady replied, "I've never heard of such a place." Undeterred by the ominous warning and the possibility that the abandoned homes were just a rumor, the group forged ahead. Another 30 minutes and another couple out walking, the group again inquired about the homes supposedly left behind by an old hippie commune. And this time, they were told that the story was fake. No such place existed. Feeling that locals were being tight-lipped about what was really in the area, the group continued, following a crude map of clues they had put together as directions. They made their way to Hellhole Canyon Preserve and descended onto a hiking trail that was poorly marked but visible enough that they could follow it. Having asked the ranger stationed at the preserve, even they said they had never heard of any such abandoned structures. Eventually, the group found the compound. The shacks were in bad disrepair and littered with Breaking Bad-style chemicals. The abandoned houses were falling apart, and there were also abandoned trailers and travel RVs on the property. It's a strange green oasis in the middle of a desert, which makes its history even more intriguing and spooky. The year was 1906, and the land belonged to Mr. and Mrs. Brady, who had homesteaded 160 acres of land. While Mr. Brady was out on a cattle drive, a homeless trio moved into the place. Mr. Gore, the man leading the trio, was an ill-tempered sort that was known to be armed to the teeth, and given his temper, it was a bad combination. When Mr. Brady returned home and found the homeless people essentially squatting in his home, Brady went to the Justice of the Peace and obtained an eviction order. The order was served on the Gores and their companion that day. The trio moved to a tent just a few yards from the homestead, where they continued to cause trouble to Mr. Brady and surrounding residents. A few weeks after the order was served, another rancher by the name of Joe Woods found some of his grain missing and blamed the Gores. The trio was arrested, but the local Justice of the Peace took pity on them and released the group. Later that day, Mr. Gore found Mr. Brady plowing the field in a fit of rage over the last few days' events, threatening the homesteader and his wife. Gore was known to pack heat, and on this day, he would use the weapon to end Mr. and Mrs. Brady's lives. Mr. Brady was hit while plowing his field, once in the back and then in the head as he turned to flee. Mrs. Brady witnessed the carnage in front of her, tried to get away, running into her home and retrieving her own weapon. Gore circled the house, calling for Mrs. Brady to come out while firing into the cabin. Mrs. Brady was almost hit a couple of times, but managed to dodge the rain of bullets. Gore then approached one of the cabin doors, forcing his way into the home. Mrs. Brady leveled her weapon, fired, bam! Once hitting the man in the chest, and as he fell to the ground, his weapon discharged one last round, striking Mrs. Brady right in the head. Both would pass from their injuries. The two remaining squatters were questioned and released as they had nothing to do with the violent events of that day. It's summarized that Miss Gore returned to Oklahoma, where she was from, and it is unknown what became of the third person. That is where this story should have ended, but where there is tragedy like this, sometimes the spirits like to stick around. It's said that on certain nights, like in the winter months, the whole ordeal can be heard reenacted. Shots ring out in the night, and the screams of those long since gone can be heard echoing over the land that they fought so hard to save. Mr. Brady's plow can be found where it fell, having grown into a tree, and nature has reclaimed the home that the Bradys loved so much. This event would go on to be called the 1906 Bloody Massacre of Hellhole Canyon. It is near this land where the urban explorers found the defunct hippie commune that is now named the Devil's Den. Lewis and Clark first reported on the region during their expedition in 1805 and again in 1806, noting how tall the gorge walls were and how swift the water ran. Many after Lewis and Clark would underestimate the savagery of the area, hence the name. Most places with hell in the title has to do with a weather, terrain, or history attached to the land. Hell's Canyon, Oregon has all three and more. Ill-fated boat trips while shipping goods from the northern Snake River to the southern portion almost all met at least a wreckage that slowed down their travels, and plenty of people expired, to put it nicely, while trying to negotiate the river and or surrounding areas. The water flows at an accelerated speed as the canyon winds its way towards the Pacific Ocean. One such group was hired by the Sam Yup Company to mine gold on a claim in the area. On May 25, 1887, 3 groups of 34 Chinese men were making their way through the canyon to mine for gold. They already had a small mason jar filled with gold dust that they kept well hidden. The White Horse Gang set out on horses and ambushed the miners by the light of the moon, firing from the rim of the gorge at Robinson's Gulch. The first attack claimed the lives of 13 miners, the last of whom was finished off with a rock as the gang had run out of ammunition. On May 26, 1887, the White Horse Gang set out again to finish the robbery. They came upon 8 more miners returning to the camp by boat. The gang slaughtered the men and dumped all 21 of them into the Snake River. Having stolen the miners' boat, the spree continued 4 miles upriver at the next camp, where 13 more workers were dispatched and $50,000 worth of gold was stolen. The brutalized remains of the men began washing ashore days after the massacre. Justice would not come for a full year after the attack, and in 1888, one of the White Horse Gang members confessed to the crimes and gave up the other men. Only 4 of the 7 men stood trial for their atrocities, as the others had fled the country. The men pleaded not guilty and blamed the whole ordeal on the 3 missing men. After a short trial, all 4 men were exonerated and set free. There was never any justice for the 23 lives lost on May 25th and the 26th of 1887. With nicknames like the Devil's Kitchen and Hades Kitchen, Hell's Half Acre in Casper, Wyoming is 300 acres of desolate desert that got its name when a cowhand, thinking he was at the actual Hell's Half Acre location, sent word that he had arrived at the meetup area. After days of nobody showing up with the cattle, that man figured out he was in the wrong area. However, the name Hell's Half Acre stuck, and is now a defunct roadside attraction. The movie Starship Troopers was also filmed in the area, breathing some life back into this seemingly forgotten place. Then, in 2005, the restaurant and hotel of Half Acre, as the locals call it, closed and the place was abandoned yet again. Hell's Half Acre has a dark history in that Native Americans used the 150-foot cliff to drive buffalo off to their deaths. The gorge that this practice was used for is known as Wyoming's Baby Grand Canyon, due to the sheer drop-offs and how some areas look like the Grand Canyon. It is said that back in the 1800s, the area was home to saloons, brothels, bank robbers, cowboys, Native Americans, and shootouts that, if you listen close enough, can possibly be heard reenacted to this day. Since December of 2005, Hell's Half Acre has been closed to the public due to the number of emergency calls local first responders were receiving from visitors being careless while trying to traverse the land. Man, that was a hell of a mouthful. It can still be observed from the parking area, but a chain link fence now surrounds much of the acre. One local was interviewed and stated that the acre has gone to hell. Hell's Half Acre is closed to the public and fenced off. There is no trespassing sign on the fence, and weather in the area is unpredictable. Take plenty of water and please use sunscreen. White Rock Canyon, New Mexico is home to Hell's Hole Cave. What deceivingly looks like a crack in the rim of the White Rock Canyon actually extends down several hundred feet to an opening that leads to a large underground cave. Since there is little to do in Los Alamos, New Mexico, there is a popular place for teens to hang out. There is an assortment of graffiti on the walls of the cave entrance. Some of it is quite good. As with most national and state parks, White Rock Canyon has a tragic history with people falling into the canyon. Several people have lost their lives due to these falls near Hell's Hole Cave. Could there be a correlation? I'll let you decide. 2017 was especially tragic, having 5 accidents leading to losses of life. On May 7, 2003, 19-year-old David Dickens fell while out hiking the area. There weren't many details on this tragic accident. The teen passed from injuries he sustained. On March 21, 2015, an unidentified 17-year-old female fell from the spur trail while seeking a better viewpoint on the hike. A few details were available on recovery efforts. August 10, 2016, and 26-year-old Deidre Tafoya was recovered from the Sandia Mountain area after falling while visiting the area with her brother and nieces. Medics were called and response time was an hour and a half. It is thought that Deidre was alive shortly after falling but perished waiting for help. The Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department helped in the recovery. On May 26, 2017, 19-year-old David Morales was hiking with a friend when he fell into the canyon near Tunnel Vista. June 7, 2017, Taos County Search and Rescue was deployed after receiving word that hiker Linda Sanford was late checking in with family after going to Hell's Hole Cave for a hike. The search lasted for about 48 hours when word had reached volunteers that search and rescue operations had ceased and a recovery was in process. Taos Ski Patrol and Taos Search and Rescue aided the county sheriff's department in the recovery and described avid hiker and nature-loving Linda Sanford on June 9, 2017. Hell's Hole Canyon claimed another victim on July 24, 2017. 18-year-old Trevor Matuzak was visiting the cave when friends say he slipped and fell to his demise. It was after this accident that the Los Alamos Parks and Recreation Board voted on installing a gate over the entrance where the teen fell from. The entrance opens up to a small ledge that has small round rocks that make solid footing almost impossible with the ledge hanging over a 400-foot drop-off. Yikes. His parents attended the meeting and made some suggestions for safety as well. Trevor was remembered as a young man that loved the great outdoors. It's easy to see why Bumpus Hell got its name in this national park. The aptly given name spurs from the boiling mud pots and streams, steam vents, and roaring fumaroles in the area, which also host one of the hottest thermal pots in the world, called Big Boiler. It's a scorching 322 degrees Fahrenheit. As the name suggests, there have been some tragedies at the extinct volcano ever since its discovery back in 1864. It was during that year that Kendall Van Hook Bumpus was guiding a newspaper man through the area when he broke through the topsoil of a geothermal mud pot, scalding his leg so bad it would eventually have to be amputated. Since then, the area has become a national park and measures have been taken to maintain safety for visitors. However, there have still been tragic events at the park. In 2009, the Botel family were in the park sightseeing with their children, one of which was 9-year-old Tommy Bodel Jr. Tommy and his sister sat on a retaining wall near the trail the family was hiking on when the wall gave way and toppled over. The parents rushed to grab their children, but Tommy was crushed by the falling wall. The Park Service superintendent knew about the deteriorating wall, but failed to fix it, and even went so far as to cover up the mistake after the tragic death. The family reached a settlement agreement a few years after the accident. In October of 2012, 2 hikers in the Bumpus Hell area went missing for 6 days. Search and rescue teams were deployed to find the missing pair, but were unable to locate them. An update on the Lesser Park website on Facebook stated the hikers were found after having spent an additional 5 days missing. No injuries were reported. However, there wasn't much information on the missing duo. In 2016, the Park Service closed Bumpus Hell hiking trail after 2 fell and broke a shoulder and were airlifted from the area. Yet another hiker broke their wrist the following day, prompting the park to issue an announcement of closure due to slippery conditions on the hiking trail caused by ice and snow. This was in July. Before they could close the park, several more injured themselves on ice and snow. In October of 2017, the Park Service closed Bumpus Trail and made several repairs and improvements to the 1.5-mile trail between the parking area and the basin. This section reopened in September of 2019, with other parts of the park closing for maintenance and improvements. Even though Bumpus Hell is in California, there is still sometimes snow present in summer months due to the amounts they get during the winter. Anyone wishing to hike the trail needs to take adequate clothing for the weather and terrain. This could mean crampons and hiking poles in July and needing a jacket and pants. The Park Service suggests the best time to hike Bumpus Hell is in late July to August or September. And while today I explained to you all the more literal, real cases of these areas, what about the supernatural? Is there any truth to that at all? Are any of these at all in any way rooted in curses or dark energy surrounding? Sure, you could call a lot of these deaths and injuries a mere cause of the terrain or area that they're in, but what if there's something more? What if there truly is an undiscovered underlying curse? I would love to know your thoughts and hear your guys' opinions in the comments down below, so please make sure you do that. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to go ahead and smack that like button and also the subscribe button for more content just like this. As always, I love you all, keep an open mind, and I'll catch you guys in the very next video.